yak eyach satini yachana takat Yuhan. Chaguksa awe Yuhan wasa achtu yak wuchin khasati. Zoom aya hidu sak ha nakahiti yachana. Ye awa hatuwasaku. Be achtuwasaku yisaku. Yada awe khoach. Eutu ish etach. Kochte kenasach ayukatangi kochte kenasach. Ye awa hatuwasaku atwasku awa watu akha anikak. Yek ewe yak, yek ewe shkun itikak. Ya hayukatangi atkhtusha yehi. Khanach yek etsu atki ka. Ya haanika atwatua at. Kayaq ke etwasaku atenagu. Aka awe hayukatangi atkhtusha yeh. Ye awa akhtuwasaku khanach awe. Ya chaltikata disatin. Khalakach tsegedi. Dasa yisatin. Yukhatan an. Chaltikata tewa haanikak. Lingit kaya achch. Joye kaya awe. Kaya tatsu. Khitete shi Yuhan. Kallidzi ya. Yatlingit tu khaltu. Kallachide gachide shiqo a. Laltsideen qane yuqakwatan. Je awe. Tlachwasa haslitzin. Yaltakat yatlingitani qatakhte sego at. Yakhana yekhwaji. Yata. Atagachtul qain. Akawe adat yuk agachtul laat. Dasa watusaku adat. Ya yag we shukwa ai. Sha shaki. Wasa yituuj. Yat adat. Kwal kayani. Dakhtasego at. Kwal atwatua at. Wanach sawe ade awe. Akuti. Wasa yituuj qoa.
Great.
So yeah, nakaqani.
Yadu sha shaki. Dasa adat yituwasaku. Wuch in yaqatul atki. Gwal dakhtasegu at. Dasa we. Akaya yiqu. Kayani. Dasa we ke qoa. Dasa we ke na Yu. Dasa watusaku. Sha shaki adat. Wanach sawe ade awuguti. Yang. Dasa yigachtu satin.
Shaki one ganin slate qadlan.
Ye awa. Kes una slay. Glade yigachtu stin. Yigachtu satin awa shaki. Gawe gachtu saku. Tag de kunahin.
We kesaqua. We kesawa away. Kaduaka. Kelke wasakagwati I kadahi. Shkalnik tan ka kesawa.
Ye awa. It's awa. Shaki kasha yada. Yeyeti. Hastsu nukt. Kalwan kanins tak itito atiguti. Hasaya kwalkahi Hu. Gau yahoe ke has awashi. Hu. Hastu shatqa awe kedin has atlechtu. We nukt. Ye awe lingit kadakqa. Lingit kakunana. Nukt atlechi wan kanins. At shuktin yek aduqa. Guk. Ltakat baqaq. Yitu agasaku. We tleinacha yak ti ishat kuchsati. Duchi yesa ye kadena natlech. Das hat sie.
Kugus.
Ye owe wan qanins qanakhrek hullakus. We shakik. Kleidi yak owe. Wash ya yidat qatuwasagu hasi eqaqushi. Janwu tawe. Wash a iti atsu at this. Aqa awe qutushi. Ya aluni. Kleidihin qa janwu qaqutushin khatqa. Ya akhkak. Klidzi qa qullagus. Heltasa ayaw tusatin. Washaya. Qunea yinde gachtuat. Shashakidach. Shada awa atigudi. Wan qanins shaya qashashakide. Qunea ya kakikait. Jawe kinde shaksatan wan qanins. Kinde shaksatan. Oh, yake. Yewe sakinya. Shaki. Kenya. Kinde. Yewe lingit qinach. Ke. Ye. Ke. Ye. Kinde. Yinde. Kinde. Yinde. De ki. De yi. De ki. De yi. Ke. Ye. Yatayach. Yewe.
Saach.
Okay. Shayaka shaki hastsu we sach one qanins to satin. Ya ye oach hasku ek hel hastu achiq ach with ach. That's it to ayeti one qanins.
Juno, Sandikihine Shayak just usk uske kekakhin khosatin shaydahin.
Oh, okay. Kayani gwalledzi hastu qusti on qanins shay qayan to satin qai uski qika khoin. Yewa.
Tawetu Shayak Yehasyati. One Mayatiyek Achalun we Towe Kunachlidzi awe Kindachun Watua at Yidat Kashan Hatsiti Yiskak I don't say that Yakega Yiskak Tuwe Atluni. It's
Okay.
stay away.
Gwall has shuk qija. Guk sunny boy hadena shich hastu iqa. Hatqa kahwe kakwashukwe yan shukak. Ye achtuas guj yesawa ye has jine yis qaku. Ye awe tawe hastu shady ayakanakh qalitzin. Chak awe Llenid shall awe wudullechen. Yidatachoa has the Tawasakukone has ya has an a screen a dedulleche. Hatsuach Tawasaku. Hasaku a dedulleche. We say not shall llynid siall we janwtsu qoa uski ashidi. Tawe qonach yege wan qanin slach yege. We qa tawe. Kulchish. Wat shada aya. Yende gachtu art. Yade. Dasa ye gachtu satin yag. Adu sakuu. Dak kayanisa.
What sick away. What sick has flown to Clitligi away. Shady Hain what sick Haswu at Shada.
Yewe khat ya ayach yati ade ataswati ye ya ge khoji we janwu kha tawe wan qanins chenkata kwal tlekha awe wujin khsati ya watsikh kha khudakhawe tlel aden de tuwe kunsa awe ayeti ya atlena qonakhawe ataswa. Okay.
One ganins shadag. Ach, du sachwa achi. Just yacheti de sawa.
Yeah, awe. Has khasatin wan tlel has khoach khoa. Yeah, has ku ek. Yeah, awe khoach. Has de achir kha tle khoach. Gwall askatu yikde ayagach tu art. Yinde. Ikde yan tu art ya yedat. At katu khoa. Gall atlein akhadzati.
Hanat a.
Yeah, awe. Atlein tle khoe khadzati ya. Wan qanins ya tu atlein khoa ya. Kanata. Wask antlefel. Chir. Chokliga. Atlein a. Take a tank.
Huelun akawagas. Segede ke kachlakach. Huelun akawagas. Oops.
Yeah, awe. Segiti. Kachalakach. Hasaya ye distin. Hasawe distin. Has awe dis like qadustin shawe yak. Ya has du nately ka ak kayak awe tel kach shahid. Shachk awe qonakhe yak at atle nak awe qudzati yak zu. Ya asta kuchu dasatsu qudzati. Ya atagweki wan qanins ak akayeti ts'ikshaltin ye awa ha'atchai qahanagu nago atina khayati wan qanins ch'ak ye awa khwa'ach ch'ak kleinach qa qonewe kenanik de qonit kanai du ich de shi Dande haska kwaat. Gwell kleinach yeel nach sati Ch'ak nach sati nak qa haska kwashi. Gwell has aus saku dachasa atinach Daqa sa'a tinachiti weqa. Gwelltellhas awasku. Ach hasawe hasawe qawdagak adatawe aqa atkatude qashachk akaq haswuat. Ltakatwe kayani tlaye qati. Daqa sa'a tinachasiyati qa kayani. Jaygu genki atya kanalsis. Gwelltellhuch jaqustin. Ye awe ade wudaskunya chaq. Daq nak so atinach kayati. Ye awe shachk ka askatu ayeti. Askatu, atkatu, askwani, jashugo atawe.
Idain shilten askutude kakigude. Talhachtwa ushku yati nate khosatini.
Ye awe chaq gwashqoneya atkatu yikte kakwagut. Weqa. Hu awe qone qaqaq ekhati. Ade hastu inyuk ewatani ye. Ya yatsinid. Hashil kohas. Ade hanai u. Yine lide gachtu art. Yaha at chai sak. Hanaku owe. Hatu wasaku akachaya katushi. Tashatoshko koa. Ye yigachisatini. Like ye yigachtusatini. Achawe tuye yigachtusaka. Ade hanai u. Tlakatuan. Kunchish. Yata yach. Kanachawe ya ka llaka. Ayanach letzin. Ka ayanach gwell. Kindewe dua ach. Gwell yata yachawe yuch ach datan. Kagacha. Hashil kohas. Ade hanai u. Yata yachawe. Yatago kago. We kagag ech yukatangi. Ka kan kagit yukatang. Ne awe. Nich ka. Akhe hakakwati. Nich. Asai tuuj.
Yodu yak.
Ye awe. Yakoe nich kuk. Jakoe just we do nich. Jayeku genki takte. Stakati lingit ani. Ka lingit. Kanachawe hatuasagu. Ya achoni kakwaus. Jakoe yihiti. Kahat. Guksa hete shakwatan. Well, gande cookie good. Goodesa. Ichkige. Dachdege. Nakide. Aga. How you Ichki. Ichki owe. Ya kashingita to us a goo. Ha hiti. Ichkide de yin. Ye awa hatu us a goo. Ye awa atla. Ya dach hitki. Ya yidet. The cut ye day. Ya chalk ho awe lingit. When qanins had to us a goo, quash qawur shatunaki goody. Qakan. Yikachisatin. We ya yaki.
You do Lingit shock.
Ye awe. Shako qanachak e. Yakawe we. Nich One qanins tashuyi yadu we qis akina qa adakhula dakhwada akawe atlain atkhats gach yalluleid naktu tayedi qanakhwe nak tuyeti yatlek ashkalniki awe watu naskatushu aqzati we qa ak qagi yak iqash qa iki chakwe with tayedi atut ayayeti yachyeti at nes yachyeti at yak qatuasagu yade kegurtletin awe qa lltakat qadlir lltakat qadait saat hinde adakhawe wan qanins we tayedi tu echi lltakat yech aya ye awe haswudanayan ye awe qa chakutatsu qutzati needs atlain atcha guncha yeil qanahaste toasagu haste atchai has uot you each wasa yisakue each dot
Each ko hintakoga.
we qis clash one qanins clash the khata taqanach we chidechia qutzati qa we each akho aqunach yagate yachyeti tan neili awa a cook aya has cool we tan one qanins clain qutzati a clainacha qa has to shut the honey cha adusa qunach we each shakir qunach yage qunach litzin we qa tan away yaltakat we qa tan ayawadlaq a joy a kakayeti a sai qutzati to cook no like what's that do new shaka qaw away new shaka qaw
It kadach weshkasnig akutatzin. Ye has we chat kwani would do a saw each has to new.
how kan cheese as the nehlitze we yuk qa qanuk a kakay has cool okay shaqas kwan qanins a kayeti
Hintak ko each clear ye clear quantity.
Hintak ye wa kayanitsu we gish we ne dao khas ye awe da kuna qutzati chayking kitushuku awan qanins qa chakutsai qutzati hintak to plain chakut takat ye de awe hintak adi kit yai plain khat qanakhwe akhu haqeya ke tlakhnakhawe ja atkhakut tsertke we yanu wasa wan qanins qanakhwe uditsnik we hlain qadasa akaye وان قنينز تلقاتن دتاني قتلقا قينخ ها something's fishy it's يا أخي أتلين هنتك أدي
Hintak kat kwanich. Akawe has our shot we kat kwanich kua. We shanya kutlak.
يا أوا أوكتاتين نوي يدو صار يا أوا يكي كو خواساي توج
Ishokoge Dakshanak Taku Jilka Kwan Ayakakwa. Is
دا
that word like that?
we السيخ أدي أجا يا كندين جاكوت أجا وان قنينز yeah تلاقي هنا وخو أخ قوشي قوش جاكوت قصتي داق شا no داق شنخ what's
Or
that وان قنينز
Shatak Ku.
how yeah أوا يكي Jeez.
Ayakakwa.
Quashi.
So Dakshanak Taku Jilkat Kwan Klako An Ku. Ayakakwa.
Yeah, wait, talk. Yeah, away. Talk away. One means heen talk. One means talk. One means walk, talk, chishugu wait, talk.
Okay. Geez.
Yatacha oyech chudechi aqad kleidcha yukatangitin wushu qagachtutla art eat.
Ya naakuch akich akich ash ua sha.
Oh, yak chawe. One qanins tlachik at qudziti at kach yak One qanins wait at has to tawasagu has out like what yatakach ketladi chik tlashasti twa ushku ya ane kach awe has out like what has to tawasagu at kach One qanins lidzi awe has to quati would do it قاوي قد وان قنين تلاش قدتي ويج أقول تحت سيقو أت ويقات تلين قوة قوشكاية قوتي يا تسينيت وان قنين خوتس وان قنين تجيدي قخ وان قنين أخو تلاش قات أكخايا يهس قوت جو يا تلاش هس خستين خيشك أدوسا تلاش Keshtutin aya qat kach. Guakan qat kach. General qa'a was like. Zisk one qanins. Yak Johan kunis cheesh wuk echa. Ach tu wuk Ade yu qayitlat ki khanakhwe wuk
Honey, Kaidahin ach ishten peace shuyi de wutu a kuch. Agawe gish wutua in ka khadko a gish pekos khwese It's go away with you.
Yak kashets uhu hini. You do a sock way pickle juice. Yak ah. Yeah, what? Atlanta, atcha. Stakadich, atcha, atcha, kutzati. Gonna cheese you han. So we'll switch over to English and give those who spoke a chance to reflect, and those who were listening maybe a chance to ask some questions, not about just anything, but just about what you heard, maybe things you were catching, or if you had questions, like you kept hearing some kind of word or something. Give us a chance to reflect without maybe doing the whole walkthrough.
Did I hear you saying that Knock lives on both niche and like other areas?
Oh yeah,
Was that what I was hearing?
That's a good point, yeah, because nak would be the octopus and nak would be medicine. And so
That makes way more sense.
yeah, there's lots of medicine. There's some up here, but there's lots right here. And then there's quite a bit right here. But the one I was thinking of was Tayedi, which is the kelp with the little bulbs on it that are like a little V-shaped kind of thing. And you could pop them and there's like a little, almost like a lotion or a grease in there. It feels kind of like aloe, like if you went and just got like aloe vera at the store or something. It feels kind of like that. It's really good for sunburns. And they say there's 8 major joints, which are your shoulders, elbows, hips, and knees. And a long time ago, people used to soak in the waters and then come out, and they would have their relatives rub that into those joint areas. That's how they get strong a long time ago. Huh. Other thoughts or reflections? Questions?
I was thinking of something while we were talking and referred to Shah Shaki. I was thinking of something that I heard Smith Katzik say one time when I was referring to something as a Shadakuk. He said to his grandson, you know, we called most things Shakiat at one time. We didn't just call them these other names. And I thought it was interesting looking at Shah Shaki and realizing the top of something, Shakiat, the thing on top. Technically, I kind of wonder when we started referring to the ones with the frontlet as Shakiat only.
That's a good question. And first, like lots of things could have a shaki. So like you have one, it's just the top of your head. The mountain has one. Let's say there was a stump and I put my cup of coffee on there. Like that's atgu shaki. That's the on the head of the trunk or whatever. Like, you know, like if there was a sawed off tree or something. But shaki there's quite a few things you could look at as well, because there's I was also talking about just the K sound and the Y sound. So all these things where K is upwards and Y is downwards. You'll see, you know, so ki is kind of upper and yi is kind of lower. So tai could be underneath something. Yi is below something. Kinde is upwards. Yinde is downwards. You'll see it in front of a bunch of verbs. If there's a low tone K in front of a verb, it's kind of an upward thing. There's a low tone ye in front of a verb, it's kind of a downward thing. But one of the things you can look at, because the cultures of Lingit and Haida and Tsimshian are so close together, that sometimes you'll look at some of the things that we all have, like a shakiat. And so in Tlingit, it's called shakiat, which means thing on the head. And in Haida, it's called sakiat, which, you know, or maybe it's sakiat, which seems to come from Tlingit. But then in Tsimshian, they have a whole word for it. So then you could theorize that the Tsimshian were the ones who started making those and then started trading them with us. And so maybe that's where, like, what we can call that? What they put it on their head, so it's a shaki. It's just theories. Nobody's better because they made a particular thing. But it's pretty fun because then you got nachin, and in Haida it's called nachin, and then I'm not sure exactly what it's called in Simshian, but that one probably originates maybe among the Lingit. Yeah, so you could sort of look at those things sometimes too. It's just kind of fun.
Yeesh.
And then kina is above. Deki is way up high. But so that's why you say like kinakat. It's like you put it on from above like a jacket.
So would Keijin to key make sense?
Yeah, it's like well, 5 up high. And then you say Keijindai Kodachitlichiak. You're too slow.
You're one of those people. Just kidding.
Don't put me in a box. Okay. Other thoughts, questions, ideas? And we can move past Christine.
Yeah, I had a question. Well, I couldn't do it quick enough because this is really hard to think really that fast. But my niece got married on the island this weekend, but I couldn't think about the past tense, only the present tense.
Yeah, well, it sounded like you said Ushu was Shah, which was
I did. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Okay.
they married them. So yeah,
Okay.
that was great. That was great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I've been hiking a lot with my mom, and I was trying to, when preparing for this, think of a way to say that, but I only found it,
yeah.
climbing though, you know. So what's like a good way to say something along the lines of I've been hiking, or
Yeah. I would probably say something like Ya hatki ka atkhwagut. I've been walking on the land. And so that's what I would think of it as. And that's actually our land. But you could also say ka atkhwagut. And let me put that in the chat so we got it. And so atk is land, and then ka is on, and then atkhwagut is I was walking around. And so there's other ways to get it a little bit more, say like I'm always doing it, or I do that regularly. And then if you wanted it, you would keep the ka, and then you would say atwatua'at. That's the part that would change to say we were doing that. And then you could say after that you could say khat ka ach kla. And then there's some fill in the blank things there as well, right? So me and my mother. So and there's other ways, like whenever you translate something, there's always like 5 ways to say the thing, right? So we're just sort of developing some basic patterns that we could sort of fill in the blanks. And so the atwagut means to walk around. So you're not going to a particular place. And then, there's other things you could do. You could start putting it into a direction. Like you could say, we were walking around at the trail by the Montana Creek, is what they call it in English, although we're going to learn all these Tlingit names and start replacing them. So we're not Montana. Nothing wrong with Montana, but it's not there. Yeah, good question. That's like, yeah. Other things or just general thoughts, questions? Anyone? Oh, go ahead.
I didn't see that hintak was one of your terms on the poster. And so when we got to each, I was asking, is that hintak? Is that in the water? And then I started talking about in the water, and I was like, got confused. But it was cool to see that that was its own term. It means hintak is in the water, right?
Yeah. So hintak is in the water. And then sometimes it's hintak, and then it's hintak. And it depends if you're talking like hintak something. And then you have something in the water. And sometimes that means like something that lives in the water, like hintak hudzi is one name for polar bear. It means like a brown bear in the water. Hintak yendakingah is the name that Kaklake, Norman James came up with for a penguin. It's a duck that flies through the water. Then I was talking about the word talk a little bit, because talk is a high tone. Talk. It means in a cavity, in some sort of thing, and it's a really interesting term. In intermediate Tlingit, we start really taking a close look at a whole bunch of these different direction location terms. And I think talk is a really fun one. Because if you have like these two cliff faces, or even just one, but like if you look at the raven and the deer story, there's this big crevice, and that's where the deer ultimately falls down. But you would say talk. So it goes down to the bottom of that. It's a cavity, the way that Tlingit looks at it. And then same with the water. The water is a big cavity, and you can go hintak. And then hintak gets really interesting because it could be you're sitting in the water and it's up to here. That's hintak. You're in the water and you're swimming around. That's also hintak. Hintak ka means you're down at the bottom. So maybe you're walking along the very bottom of the lake or whatever it is. But then there's a couple other things that have talk that might be a little bit unexpected. Your eye seems to have one. The pupil is called wak shitak. So that sounds to me like eye has a cavity. It has, and so the sh classifier for a verb sometimes means it has this thing. Like guk is an ear. And if I had a hat that had big ears on it, it could be shigukus ah. So another thing that has a cavity is the fire. So you can have gun chitak, and that's to put something into the fire. So again, like back to the Tlingit way of thinking, like there's some sort of cavern or cavity there. And so you'll see sometimes this word talk come up, and sometimes it's in kind of unexpected spots. And then the rule, when we're looking at compounding, forming a compound in Tlingit, is you have what sometimes we'll call the head word, which is usually the last one. And usually the very last word, so you have a bunch of words that smush together. Like you might have askatuyakkeitli, the dog in the woods, and that's one word smushed together. And so what happens is most of the vowels will go low, so they'll flatten all the ones except for the last word. And then sometimes it'll shorten them as well, unless shortening them would just really confuse the meaning. So like os does not contract to us, but eo contracts to actually ow. So you'll see things like that. And it's just sort of some pattern recognition. And it does help because sometimes you'll see this great big long word and you're like, it's really hard to remember that great big long word. Like kasha khasha for scissors. But kasha khasha just means, it means the thing that cuts people's hair or head technically, but that's how you say cutting hair. And yeah, Ganeshish, I'm glad that you guys were jumping in there. And I was trying to say, just throw a noun out. It doesn't, because then we'll take it and it'll give us ideas on what to talk about. So we'll try other stuff like that again. Cool, Kwasa.
Well, that's kind of what I was asking about in regards to Dakshanak Taku'u, because Dakshanak referring to Klakoan Hill, the alluvial fan of what Klakoan is basically the slide that came down from Dakshanak Klakoan Hill. That's what we're living in, is on that alluvial fan. So when I was thinking, referring to Klukwan people, I was thinking the other day that Dakshanak Taku'u is referring to Klukwan people. And that's what I was asking if that was correct.
Yeah, and if you stand up there, sometimes a really big valley will also have, it's a talk. If you stand up
Right.
high enough, it's a big container. And a container it's a big cavity. It's basically, at some point, Tlingit starts thinking of things like that, like a lot. And then sometimes these connections really get made. So like, where are they? Oh, they're down there in the valley. So in the valley, there would be talk.
That's going to be my new song group we're having just for Klukwan people in the village.
Down deep in the village. Oh, yeah. If you had if you had a hole, and then you went down into the bottom of it, you would be talk. You could talk down into that hole. Yeah, and so it gets also really interesting, like when is it on, when is it in, when is it inside? And maybe we're sort of transitioning to this direction location thing, which we can look at a few of those. And with anything in Tlingit, like as we do like this sort of 3-week crash course thing, like I'll show you a few things, but then there's a million more of those things. And so a lot of it is just saying, okay, here's these types of things, and here's a list of them. And as far as how you internalize that list, it's kind of up to you, whether you sort of, I had some students that start drawing pictures and making little stories, and that's how they'd remember that. Or they make songs about around the cup, under the cup, in the cup, on the cup, and these different things like that. And so sometimes there's a logic to it. You're absorbing the logic, right? Because in English you say, pour the coffee in the cup, right? That's what you would ask someone to do. But in Tlingit you'd say, cup on pour. That's how you'd say it, and it would be on. And that's just, for a long time, my brain was like, that's not on, that's in. But just going back to the Tlingit way of thinking, that's how the language works. Okay, let's see. Oh, wow. Yeah, and the other thing is related to some of these sometimes weather things, which does get really scary, is a slide. So you might have, I'm gonna pull this up real quick. So sometimes we get these things in Tlingit where it's like a noun that attaches to another noun. And so this is one of them. It's this word qadi. So qadi means some sort of geologic slide. And so and by slide, I'm not talking about like a slide at the park or anything like that, but like a mudslide, a rock slide, an avalanche. It's a big event. And we had some here, and we always have in Southeast Alaska. Is just sometimes you just get this stretch of weather, and then you just start getting these big mudslides, and they're very dangerous. And if you go back, you could find really old stories about people getting wiped out. And sometimes too, when we had the medicine people, they would say, everybody's got to go. It's coming down tomorrow. And everybody would just jet out of there. And the next day, the big mudslide or the rock slide would come down and wipe out the community. So what you can see is you could put te in front of it, and you have teqadi. So that's a rock slide. And you could put glate, which is snow, in front of it. Glate qadi. That's an avalanche. So then, when we started getting these ones here, like last year, there was a couple here in Juneau, and then a really bad one in Haines and Deishu. We're calling them qadi, the mudslide, because it was a whole bunch of mud coming down. But some of these have significance. Sometimes you get place names with qadi in them because there was a slide there and you can still see it, and it becomes a significant thing. Other thoughts, questions? Okay.
Well, actually, like let's think about I was just wondering in my mind about clouds that are next to the mountains or between the mountains. You kind of like floating around that I see all the time. Is that also talk?
That's and so now we're getting into some really interesting territory. When you get up, you're in the clouds, but it's like you're in the fog, and so like trying to talk about where things are and right around the mountains and like being up against it. And so those are probably some where we'd have to bring in some other speakers and just start asking them, because sometimes we just got to drill through a whole bunch of questions. Like there was he was always asking like really good questions. He's in Sitka. His name is Matt, maybe. And he took a cup. We were in Yakutat, and he kept filling it full of different things and saying, "Well, what is this now? What is this now? Is this one?" Because you got full of water and you got full of solids, and then there's these sayings like in English, be like, "Well, is it half full or is it half empty?" And it becomes this big philosophical thing, and you just say katut. It's katut. That's all it is. That's not halfway to any. That's just halfway. It doesn't be full or empty. And so Matt Goff and Sheesh. And so he was always fun to visit with because he would start thinking of all these things. And sometimes you'll run into these areas where you got to start. And there's linguists who are really good at this stuff too, where they'll think of an exercise to try and get the speaker to think of it. Because sometimes if you just start drilling a speaker on some stuff, they'll start getting a little frustrated because a lot of times you need context for language to work. So some of them they developed these stories like Seth Cable. I watched him do a story one time with these three speakers, Kasech, Selena Everson. I want to say Kehinuk, John Martin was there. And maybe it was Yachtitlakt, Lillian Austin. And so he had this little story. So this guy had a cat, and the cat was real stinky. And he wanted to give the cat a bath. So he's like, "Okay, cat, bath time." And so the cat runs into the garage to hide because he don't want no bath. And so the guy goes into the garage, and there's these three baskets, a yellow one, a red one, a blue one. And he thinks, "Hey, I bet you the cat's under the blue basket." And nope. "Oh, then maybe it's under the red basket." "Nope. It's got to be under the yellow basket." And then he finds them and then gives him a bath. And it was really fun to see how the story helped, because his whole goal was to figure out how do you talk about doubt and certainty in Tlingit, because there's ways to say things like maybe yes, maybe no, maybe probably not, maybe I think so. And then you start getting into, I really think that's the way it is. And then it was really fun because then that's when I learned the phrase chanichk, which means for nothing. And there's actually two ways to say this. So chanichk, it's really, if you looked at it and you know what those different parts are, it literally means just sitting on the beach, just residing on the beach. And then another way to say the same thing, even though it does something different, is chaqiqa. And I got to put a bunch of dashes after it so the underline shows up on the G. Chaqiqa means it's just swinging, like a swing or a hammock. So the idea here is chanich means it's kind of stuck on the beach. Chaqiqa means I pushed it out, but it just came right back. And both of them can pop up right before a verb and mean for nothing, in vain, right? So chanich kiyaak achidachiltsin. So that's what they said, or maybe they said ikach kachwashi. You tried for nothing to hide from me, because despite your trying, I still found you. And it was really fun, and so they would really laugh and give phrases like that. Let me catch up with the chat. Saknain is borrowed. I believe it's related to Sabli, and I believe it comes with Chinook jargon, probably from French, maybe. It does, sometimes that raven, so sometimes raven will do that. So like gouache is usually kind of a maybe, but I kind of doubt it. Shakde is a pretty straight, maybe yes, maybe no. And kshe is sort of like maybe, and I kind of think it is that way. So that's how you're giving your doubt and you're also saying maybe at the same time. So I say guaxie to my kids all the time because, it's a way to get out of saying no right away. Hey, can we go here? Oh, guaxie, guaxie. Okay. Any other things you folks are thinking about?
Guate.
Okay.
If it's appropriate, I had a resource question, but I can hold it for later.
No, it's fine. Let's hear it.
So I almost went and bought YouTube like Pro because I wanted to listen to your sounds video on loop with no ads and download it. But because it's kids content, you can't download it. I was wondering if you do have it available in a file that we could share. It would be great to just keep on my phone.
Oh, yeah, I certainly can work on that. That's a really good question because there are data limits and stuff. There's kind of a middle ground, maybe. I can work on trying to make more videos available and linking to them. But also, if that doesn't happen right away, there is a program that I found. I gotta look it up real quick because it changed its name. And I think it costs about $30 maybe. And it's a good software, but it's also one of these softwares that's going to try and sell you a million other things. So don't buy just get this one thing. It's called Wondershare Uni Converter, which is, I'll type it in the chat because it's kind of and what it does, and there's probably other programs that do it, but I've liked this one because it does a number of things that I really like. One is any type of video you have, it can convert it to other formats pretty easy. It's not like super easy, but it'll show you these options and you don't have to know a million things about. There's so much stuff I don't know about videos. When you're going to render and it gives you like these million options, I'm like, I have no idea what you're asking me. But then also it can take a video that you have, and if you're doing language work and you work in this program called Elan and you export subtitles, you can import it into this program, and then you could set the font and the color, and you could do lots of really cool stuff to burn it directly onto the video, which is awesome. But you also need to know you can upload things to YouTube and upload the subtitle file there, because if you find a mistake later, you don't have to re-render the whole video. If you burn them on, they're just there. But also if you burn them on, you could burn a DVD in case some people are still rocking DVDs and other things, and and you can have subtitles there so they could turn it on in their DVD player that's probably 30 years old. But then the third thing that it does is you can enter a link from YouTube and almost anywhere where there's video, and it will download it for you. So that's probably what I use it quite a bit. So like I haven't filmed elders in a long time. I feel pretty bad. I go through these phases of sadness too, because I film them and then some of them we lose them and I get real sad. But when I film them and I want to work on that video in this program called Elan, I'll upload it to YouTube. And there's probably other ways to do this. And then I'll download it because it lets you select the resolution. And so I'll pick one that's a smaller resolution because this Elan program starts to get worn out if the video's 30 minutes long and you're transcribing and translating the whole thing. So I want to talk for a second about a couple other resources that are out there. Then I'll turn it over to the group. And it's not really a democracy. It's like a first come, first serve. Whoever says the thing gets the thing. And we'll decide what we do with the rest of our time. I'll give you some options. But I do want to show you a couple other resources that are out there. So let me just go through these just kind of quickly, one at a time, with the ones I think I might have already gone through. So there are several dictionaries out there. There's the Dictionary of Tlingit by Carrie Eggleston. It's under Carrie Edwards. And then there's the most complete noun dictionary out there called the Interior Tlingit Noun Dictionary by Jeff Lear. This one is a dictionary I've been working on, which attempts to combine all the existing dictionaries, although maybe it'll be ready in 20 years. But I'm probably pretty soon, I'm just going to go ahead and do a print edition so that if folks want to, they can get it. There's mistakes in here. Some people have given me a real hard time about that, and that's fine. They can give me as hard time as they want to, but it's reaching the point where I'm gonna start telling people, like, please send an email to my ancestors and they will respond when they are ready. Because some people write me really ugly messages, and I don't know, some of the behavior, I'm like, you know what if we just show this to the people then? But anyways, so this one, it's searchable. It's in two main sections. The first one is, or I guess three, sorry, is Lingit. So it's alphabetized. And then there's a couple things to note, is it treats the vowels a little bit differently. So it goes short, low, short, high, long, low, long, high. It goes in that order. So if you're looking for something that starts with ah, you got to go to the long, high A's. Also, it's not all English alphabetical because the vowels are grouped. So if you go, you're going to have the A vowels, then the E vowels, then the I vowels, then the U vowels. So if you're looking for double O, it's going to be down past the letter U. Let's see. But it's also, this first section is no verbs. It's everything that's not a verb. The second section is all verbs. So you're looking it up by the verb root. So if you're looking for gouache, because you want to beat the drum or stab something, not a person, don't do that. That's the verb you're looking for. And it's also ringing the bell. And then it takes a lot of work from Carrie Eggleston's stuff, and it takes stuff from Jeff Lear's stuff. But, you know, I'm just going to say they don't own that stuff. It's not theirs. It's not their language. They don't own it. They each have accused me of like stealing their work and stuff. And I don't care. They could do that. That's their right to communicate that to me. But this language does not belong to them. And it never has and never will. I'm just going to say that. And if people want to take this work and go make other things that are better and that are different, go for it. Do stuff. This is our language. We're allowed to play around with our language and to figure it out on our own and to figure it out with each other and to learn more and to teach more. If my elders start telling me, you know, my clan uncle starts telling me knock it off, I'll knock it off. But I got problems with people who claim things as their own. I'm just going to say that, especially if they come from outside the culture. I have no problem with people learning. I have no problem with people learning or using the language. But when people start to become authorities on it and start to write nasty letters to people, I don't have a lot of patience for that. But I do appreciate all the incredible work that they've done. I had phone calls with Constance Nash and Jillian Story. I said, can I take your work? Can I just try and make a new thing out of it? They said, it's your guys' language. Do whatever you want. Would be happy if you guys kept it going. So then you get into the English section, and that's how this one works. So let me show you another resource with less politics. So the Tlingit Verb Dictionary. This is a yellow cover dictionary. I think we talked about this one already. Read all the stuff that they have to say about our language. Back in 1973, this is what they were thinking. And there's quite a few things that we've change some of the terms and change some of the ways that we talk about how it works. But this one, the majority of stuff is going to be in the English section. So you would look up, if we want to look up, what was I going to say? Well, how about succeed? Let's look up succeed. I'm trying to use positive verbs. So we're going to go to SU, surface, sunburn, sun. And sometimes it's neat just to scroll through this, because sometimes you're like, I don't know what to study. And then you'll find like a really neat verb. Like if you go down here and you see, oh, for the sun to rise, for the sun to set, for the sun to shine. And you can sort of find sets of verbs sometimes like that. Let's see. What was I looking for? Succeed. Okay. So now here you've got this, and we code this stuff a little bit differently. And so what a lot of us do that are attempting to document the language and teach it is to say, here's the parts. And then teach you like, here's what these parts do. Here's how you start changing them. And for here, like, so then you get some sample sentences. We're going to try to make it to the shore. What a wonderful phrase. And I'll tell you why. One time I was at a ku'ik and I was very sad because a friend of mine passed away. And the clan opposites were singing their cry song. Sad, sad, sad stuff. And all of a sudden, Herman Davis starts yelling, Yende ya ya naitlak, Yende ya ya naitlak. And I was really inspired hearing him. So I went over and talked to him. I was like, you got to tell me what you're, I know what you're saying, but you got to tell me about that. And so he says, well, it means you're right on the verge of succeeding. Because I want the sadness to be over. He says, so it's like you've been paddling in this canoe through all kinds of bad weather, and maybe you thought you weren't going to make it, and then you see the shore. And so someone would start yelling that, Yande ya ya naitlak. And that's important. It's important for learners to know you are succeeding, and no matter where you're at, doing this for a long time, plugging along, new to it, trying to get started. There's a lot of times where I think language learners will say, I just don't think I can do it. I'm not enough. I'm, blah, blah. Someone was mean to me, whatever. But just, you gotta have those things to hold on to. And then sometimes you get another, I don't think you guys will succeed. So brings us right back down. But anyways, this is a great resource. So one of the things that you learn to do as you're learning Lingit is to spot the parts of the verb. And you learn this a little bit at a time. So if you hear someone say, Yende ya ya naitlak, you'll say, glak. Glak is at the end. And so you'll learn to spot the verb root. And so if you looked in this dictionary, you'd go to glak. So here's DL. The way they alphabetize this book is by where things are in your mouth. So front of the mouth things to back of the mouth things, which sometimes you just got to get kind of used to it. So that's why the vowels go E, A, U, Ah. So if we're looking for glak, it's going to be towards the end. And then you'll see to gain, to get, to obtain, acquire, succeed, be successful, accomplish, make it, defeat, and beat. So learning this kind of one verb, you could say we succeeded. And you could say, like, let's say we're getting ready to play basketball and I need to trash talk, which you could do in Lingit. But, be nice, I don't know. But you could say, I'm gonna beat you, right? Or, there's all kinds of stuff you can learn how to say. Okay. Yuck A. So, but that's this one. And great sample sentences, great. Sometimes it's written a little different than we write it today. primarily, you might see two vowels with a downward tone mark. These days, we just don't even write that downward tone mark. It just means it's long and low. There's other ones where they write the vowel long where it should be short. But don't worry about, you can learn that a little bit later. Okay. So going through, well, there's two other things that I want to show you folks here. So one, this is for a deeper dive into some of the verbs. So one of them is this list of Tlingit verbs from Jeff Lear. And it's incredible. It's like 800 some pages of just notes written down on these tablets. So as far as approachability goes, it's handwritten, there's scribbles, so sometimes it's not always the best place to go first. However, this has more verbs than anything else. They're all here, because nation story, as wonderful as they were, they're not going to put like the poop verb in there, and they're not going to make, the thing that people do that ends up making more people. And I was doing my dissertation defense in Hawaii, and I was all nervous because they have like big ceremonies that they do over there. And at one point I sort of mentioned that their resource was so wonderful, but it left some things out and kind of sanitized the language for whatever reason. And I says, you can't poop, you can't pee, you can't make more people. And so then I said a whole bunch of other stuff. And then I sat down, and the committee had to go deliberate to see if I passed my dissertation. And they assigned someone who was the guard. He was my guard, because I'm supposed to sit there and nobody's supposed to come near me. And it's so serious that like Larry Kimura, the grandfather of the Hawaiian language movement, came up to talk to me. And this guy Yota, who's the guardian, made him go sit down. And so later, Larry came up to me and says, I didn't know you were a kapu, which means I was forbidden. But anyway, so Yota sits next to me. I was real nervous. Like, they're very ceremonial over there. One time I was doing something with those guys over in Hawaii, and they said, what did they say? They said, look reverent. And I said, I don't even know what that means. And so, but anyway, I'll show you guys where this resource is, and these ones I'm showing you. So he says to me, as I'm nervous, he says, so how do you say make more people? He's a fun guy. But so this one has so many verbs, so many. And as you go in here, you click on the bookmark, whether you're looking at Adobe Acrobat or you've got Preview or some other PDF viewer, there's usually a way to look at the table of contents, and then you'll have this. And so, and so again, not the alphabet, you gotta sort of look at.
My apologies.
Look at, I'm getting trickstered here. Got a dog chewing on a bone, kids showing me their school picture dresses, and my watch is going crazy. So, but if you click on one of these, like we'll just go look for doc, since we were on that track. So here's DL, and sorry if you can't see it, I don't know how to make everything bigger. But when we click on the little arrow that expands it, and then here's DLA, DLE, DLI, DLU. And I can expand that even and get to every individual verb root. So we got one to settle, deep, that's where qadlan would be, coil, scratch, like a cat, like how a cat sometimes will scratch something real fast. Succeed, tide or strand, and then clear water. So we'll go look at succeed. So when you click here, sometimes you got to sort of move around and see, because sometimes it brings you like one page past where you want it to be. So, but if you just look around, you'll see you're there. So here's Dlak. And then it gets a little tricky because it's handwritten in pencil. Sometimes a little hard to read, but here's a Yawadlak, got it, made it to the destination, succeeded, won it, earned it, defeat somebody, you know. So it usually just gives you like what we call the perfective form, which means it has already happened. But this is also a really good source to just look through. And also, I'll show you where you could find a typed version of this, which Yecht Uchtla, who's among us right now, she just did it. She asked, she's like, is there some project I can do? And I was like, well, if you want to type up this 800-page handwritten thing, that'd be awesome. And she did it. And it's amazing. So now you could do also, so you can open it's another PDF, but it's typed, and you could do searches in it too. So it's just incredible. So, okay, let's see. Let me back up, make sure I didn't miss anything. And yeah, like body part stuff, there shouldn't be any shame. And also you'll learn all these verbs. Some people will tell you all kinds of stories, and some of it's funny, and some of it, you know, and some of it's just matter of fact sometimes. Let's see. And yeah, and so that I do really like that Lear went and he documented these verbs. And there were other ones too, like before this thing was scanned, it was sitting in the Alaska Native Language Center, which is an amazing place, but it's in Fairbanks. So before it was scanned, you know, unless you went to Fairbanks and looked at it, and I do believe James Crippen is the one who scanned this and built the table of contents. Let's see. And Jeff Lear is in Juneau. He works for Sealaska Heritage Institute. Okay, I think I caught up on the chat. So that's this one. And let's take a look at where to find these things. Let me find my web browser. So going to clinkitlanguage.com, and then let me zoom in here. Learning Tlingit, Tlingit MOOC. If you scroll down and you start getting into the resources, there's beginning resources, there's intermediate resources, and there's advanced resources. So under advanced resources, it's called Tlingit Verbs Notes. That's the one I'd recommend. That's that yellow one we just looked at. And what I'll do is I'll update this tonight so that we have the typed version in here as well, which I think you could find under resources as well. The Verbal Structure Handbook, if you've been doing this a little while and you want to take a sort of deeper dive into how the verbs work, this is a really wonderful resource. It takes a little bit to understand how to use it. But for those of you who want to keep going with your studies of Tlingit, we're going to keep trying to create ways to make it free and available. But I want you to know that there's language teachers out there. Kushek, there's a number of classes coming up. Reading and writing classes, pronunciation, beginning Tlingit. Ida, Heather Burge, is also teaching beginning Tlingit in Juneau. I'll be teaching intermediate and advanced Tlingit. And all these have distance sections. And if you want to take it, but can't afford it, reach out. We'll help you out. We'll either find some money so that you can figure out how to do it, or the link is on the clinkitlanguage.com. We never tell anybody to leave. We never ever told anybody to leave. The only time I tell somebody to leave, I guess if they're bothering somebody, just raising a ruckus. We haven't had any ruckuses so far. Ruckus. So so far so good. But we really want people to learn. We really want people to keep going. We dabble a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there in the MOOC. And then, but the big thing is just to let people know it's something you can do. And it's something you should do. And it's something we could do together. Whole bunch of stuff. Like you just get used to That's sometimes saying, I don't know. Let's go find out. Because this language is qatlan, it's deep. Get down into that halibut hole. Classes start on Monday. All the classes that I teach will be recorded and posted on YouTube, so you can watch them. You can also join us. You don't have to be enrolled in a program. There are credit options, like so if you're trying to get a degree or get a certificate, we have certificates now in speaking and teaching the language, then you're gonna want the college credit option. That is also the most expensive option. But the PETAS program, and then there's several other programs that can help fund some of these things. And there's 0 credit options, which is, well, I'm not trying to get certified. I just want to learn the language, and I got a little bit of money that I can chip in to keep the thing going. I do believe there's a day coming where we just won't have to charge any tuition. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I think somebody owes us something. I'll just say that. I'm going to send out some invoices. That's probably going to governments and churches. So, you know, I'm not trying to sue any churches, but I'm just trying to say, hey, y'all did some things. And so y'all could do some other things that are good things. And, you know, and I think give people a chance. Say, we're not trying to shame you. We want you to get ahead of this thing. Put some good PR out there. Say, hey, we did these things, but now we're doing these cool things. Instead of making us say, hey, you did these awful things, and we're going to tell everybody. So
I'll seal some envelopes for you and send it out. You write the letter.
letter writing campaign, let's do it. Okay.
Let's do it.
So now, you guys want to look at direction, location things, opposites, the ha'atchayi, or revisit the possessive and relational suffix?
I'd say directions. That's my
Okay.
vote.
The one vote for directions.
Possessions.
Ooh, and possession. Okay. I don't know what to do now. Breakdance fight? Or we'll do a little of each?
Dance off.
Okay. Grouse dance. I'm just kidding. Okay. We'll do 15 minutes of each, so we kind of flash lessons. And then we got tomorrow too to figure out like one more gathering just for this though, because it keeps going. And when it keeps going, it's also when we break it into groups from the beginners and the intermediate and the advanced, it just sort of, you can go along a structured path. But this
Possession-y sounds good.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll just do a real quick thing then on direction and location. It'd be the fastest. So when we talk about direction and location, it's about where things are and how they are being in that particular place. What that means, like, it's there, but is it at rest? Is it moving around? Has it recently arrived there? Those types of things. And they sort of, they stack onto each other sometimes. So the one thing that we think about when we're using these terms is there's kind of these 3 categories of these types of terms, where something's at and where it's going, or what it's sort of doing in regards to moving. So the first one is relative to whoever is speaking. It's right here, it's there, and it's way over there. But it's always relative to whoever's talking, right? So it's right next to me. It's over there from me. It's way over there from me. The second one is how 2 objects relate to each other. These are what we call prepositions in English. It's under the table, on the table, around the table, near the table, those types of things. The other thing is we call them postpositions in Lingit because they come after. So instead of on the table, you'll say table on, table under, table around, table near. That's how the word order works, okay? The noun, then the relational term, okay? And the third is these universal points where the ocean is, going inland, up high, down low, those types of things. Okay. So the other thing to remember with these is there's these kind of types of words. Some of them need another noun to belong to, right? Like a whole bunch of these. Like if you want to say on, it's got to be on something, right? Like and even in English, someone says, "Hey, you see my keys?" Like, yeah, they're on. It doesn't make any sense, right? You say they're on the table, they're on the counter. Or you can say on it, and now you're just being real mysterious. Yeah, they're on it. What? So in Lingit, there's sets of things, like, so there needs to be belonging to something, having a relationship with something. This is very similar to the things we were talking about in the possessive suffix. Then when you get to those, like for example, here's a little thing, it has two names. If you live on the coast, this thing right here runs around, runs around the trees. It's a bunch of like pine cones all day or something. If you live on the coast, you call it kanaltsak. Kanaltsak.
Oh,
If you live in the interior, you call it kaltsak. Kaltsak. Okay. So we're gonna move kanaltsak around a little bit, around some objects, so we could show you how some of this stuff generally works. This thing is called nadak. So here, gusu'ah with kanaltsak. So nadak shukawu with kanaltsak. So in this case, you have this, which is a directional term. It's a postposition, and it needs to belong to something. So now you can be in front of a whole bunch of things. Yak shuka, in front of the boat. Hit shuka, in front of the house. Ach shuka, in front of me. So the second thing is some of these terms can also take a suffix. It's a combination of this word and the suffix that helps you to show where things are. Shukawu, it is in front of, in this case, nadak. So you could say nadak shukade, it's going towards the front of the table, right? So there's a set of these suffixes that have to do with where something's at. And then there's a whole long list of these words. Some very common ones are around, da, on top of, ka, underneath, tayi. And so there's a chapter in Hausane Hayuk Atangi that just lists a whole bunch of these. And I kind of broke them down into these tables to like ones I thought that were used more than ones I thought that were used less. And then if you get into Zeosh, James Crippen's verbal structure handbook, he's got a huge list of them. And so all roads lead to tables, right? So tables are lists. It's like, here's this huge list of words. But in terms of how does a learner approach some of this stuff? Sometimes you're taking some of these lists and you're just going to power through them. It's like, I got to memorize this thing, memorize this thing, memorize this thing. But for some people, like that doesn't work for them, just to look at a list of tables and just like, you know, for some people they'll just absorb it, right? But others, like, you got to come up with exercises and come up with activities. And in intermediate Tlingit this year, we're going to try and come up with a bunch of this stuff together so that you could say ata, and I can't remember how the rest of the song went. You know, so I went atayi, akina. And so you can go around it, under it, over it, and then in it. So the other thing that I'll say about some of these, so this was, we're sort of going over some of these in Teslin. And we're at the, what is it called? The Yukon Inn? Is that what the place is called there? And they got a nice restaurant there and a really great little hotel there. And so a bunch of us would just gather and eat dinner there after studying Lingit for 6 hours every day. Yukon Motel, sheesh. And so we're sitting there, and Shkuyet Tim Hall wanted to understand these terms that you see on this napkin. So he wrote it out on this napkin as we were sort of brainstorming and making sure that some of these concepts were understood. Looking at the chat, weh means kind of there, but it's another way to say that. So if there was a cup right here and a cup over there, I say yaguka, weguka, because Tlingit does not have articles. So articles are like the. Like, so if you just stopped using articles in English, like it would just be strange, right? Because if you say, where's my keys? On table, under chair, right? And so, you know, if you just drop, like Hawaiian, like has lots of articles, ka or ke. When you see that in a Hawaiian word, that's probably means the, you know. Okay. So here's these categories of, and this has to do with being in things. And I've got some illustrations and stuff, not just the napkin, but I like the napkin example. I took a picture of it because I thought it was neat. So ka, and these, you would write these with a long dash so that you know, and there needs to be a noun right before it to say what it's on, okay? So ka is on, but it is also in a spillable container. So like a cup, it would be in a cup. And it's also, sometimes if you have an open container, like a box, you're gonna put something in the box, it's gonna be hook ka. Yik. Yik is generally means a shallow container, but it's a little bit more complicated than that sometimes. So yik is floating in the water, especially like a boat. A boat that floats in the water is yik. When it comes to water, yik means in the water, but the water is not deep enough to submerge. That's how I think of it. So about up to a person's knee. Once it gets above the knee, it's starting to get towards hintak. But it's all, and so it, but not only is it in the water like that, but it's also in the boat. So you could be yak yik, while the boat is hin yik. And because in Tlingit, a car is a boat, you should also, if you're getting in the car, at at yik. So you yik into a car. A lot of people say tu, but it should be yik. That's just how you get into a car, because that's also how you get into a boat. You also, if you're in a tree, like a bird is in a tree, as yik, because the tree is, it has something to do with being open to the above, maybe. It's really interesting. You also are yik in the forest, askatu yikt, or askatu yikte, or askatu yik. You would also use yik for in the road. So day is road. And a lot of people say day ka, because it's just how you would think about it in English. But a road is a river. That's why you would yik into the road. And in a creature's body. So yik adi is all your guts and all your inside organs. And yik could also be in the body. Okay. Tu. This should have a high tone over it. So tu is inside a closed container or an abstract concept. So something that's closed, like a box that the lid is closed, now it would be tu. Open it up, and now it's ka. A box with the lid on there, sure. People, it's your thoughts. Usually you're talking about your thoughts or your emotions. Or they'll say, Itu ye ti hayukatangi. Our language is inside of you. So just also the abstract inside as well. And then abstract concepts as well. But this wouldn't be like in the winter. This wouldn't be, you know, so there's a whole bunch of things in English that you use in for that you wouldn't really use. You just say talk at the winter is basically what you're saying. Ta or talk, bodies of water, holes or pits, cavities, which includes your eyeballs, the fire. It's wild. Then the last one is ye, which is inside of a building or a home. So if you're going into the store, you should be using ye and not tu. Just sort of, but then it gets complicated too, because sometimes a porcupine won't be os yik, it'll be os ye, because it lives in the tree. It also lives in the ground, but. So once you start studying this too, like there's a whole logic to every language has its own logic, and it's totally fine. But then sometimes your English brain is going to be challenged by some of this stuff. And then, you know, you'll be wanting to say, put it in the thing, but then you got to look at the thing for a long time and be like, well, what kind of thing is it? But it's okay. It's okay, because you know how to do this stuff in English already. And so English has its own things like that, right? We usually say what's on TV, but you know, and we went back and forth with that one in Lingit. We said, well, would it be tu? They said, yeah, probably. We say, would it be ya? Because that's on the face of it. They say, oh yeah, definitely. And then we say, well, how do you say what's on TV? And then they switch to ka every single time. So, yayik is a noise. Yes, that's correct. Okay. So there's a whole list of these, and we can look at them perhaps in a bit more depth tomorrow, if we want. But if you study, and also if you look in Hausa Necha Yukatangi, there's a chapter, and then we start looking at examples, and we start running this kanatsak all over the place, yikde and dakde, and we just start looking at some examples of how these things work. But one is sort of understanding what is the perspective. Are we talking about where it is in relation to me? Is two things in relation to each other? Or is it these universal points in the universe, in the building, out of the building, those types of things? And then some of them are also a little interesting, right? Because in English, you'd say, it's raining on me. In Lingit, you'd say, ach ka siudaku setan. My on rain precipitating. So you would just like what kinds of pronouns you use is going to shift a little bit in Tlingit. So speaking of pronouns, let's review not this whole thing that we did, but just get into the nitty gritty of the rule. Oh yeah, was there a question or a thought? You could do two.
Rashtish, yeah, on that note, sorry, I was running in and out with my kids a bit, so I missed a bit, but Yikdu too, just to recap, or what does it mean when it's a person's name, since it's the name I have?
That's a really good question, because once you start learning a bunch of these direction and location things, you start to look at place names. I think is a really good place to start looking. So for example, as you go through here, you start getting down to some names of things. And then sometimes you'll see a bunch of stuff in there, like, you know, Dak is compressed in there for Daksha, inland mountain. As far as what the yik could be in a name, it's hard to say sometimes. I'd probably have to take a look at it, ask around a little bit and figure out what clan it comes from, because when you say yik, usually you expect a noun to be before it. If it is this shallow container one, you'd usually have like a yik in it, or the shallow, something about the shallow container of it. In this case, yikdutu, the last part, it certainly sounds like a verb to me. And it sounds like it's reading or counting. It would be my sort of guess, but I'd probably have to take a closer look. And names get really complicated as well, because they go through extra levels sometimes of compression and other things that happen. And some names are just sort of specific to some story. And then once you take the story out, you just have this sort of small structure of it.
Sheesh.
Okay.
That last PowerPoint, is that on the MOOC website?
Well, it's under resources, and then if you go to slideshows, there's a whole bunch of slideshows. You can always get them there. But what I'll do tonight is when I upload the recording, I'll put a link to all of this sort of, usually what I'll do is I'll just put a link to all the things we looked at. Unless it's sort of the resources that are listed right above, like and stuff. Those ones are towards the top of the page. But yeah, when we start looking at slideshows and stuff, usually if you just go to the MOOC page, it'll say like the date, handouts, and then it will say like the date, the topics, handouts, and that's where you'd find it. And then the video if you want to look at it again. Okay. 13 minutes of possession. So just recapping what this chart shows you is how to predict, and a lot of it is just sort of predicting, trying it out, right? That's a big part of the language learning process. It's like, here's these rules. When you start to put them into practice, they kind of make sense, right? I think a lot of this stuff sometimes it's very abstract, and then it sort of starts to make sense once you put it into practice, right? So the relational suffix, which is also called the possessive suffix, it's a vowel that'll pop up at the end of the word. It's a vowel. Vowel suffixes are almost always the opposite of the tone before them. Is your hand up again? Yikdutu?
Click.
Okay. Sorry, I just got a notice of it. Okay. So it's going to go low, high, or high, low. That's what we expect. The first thing to think of, it's going to be the letter I. So as a sound, it should be I or E. It doesn't matter which one it is. You could say achiti, you could say achiti. It doesn't affect the meaning at all. I write them short. They could be short or long. But it should be the opposite tone. Achiti, achketle. That's what we should expect. We should expect to go high, low, or low, high. If the word does not have a consonant at the end, you have to add the Y. So sa-yi, right? So that's it just has to have that, because you can't go vowel straight to another vowel. Can't do that in Lingit. So if there's a W on the end, or it's rounded, it's got some hidden rounded ending, usually it's just, you see a W, it's going to be a U instead of an I. So instead of I, it will be U. If it's open and rounded, which they're very, well, gao, right? Then then that will be there. There's a couple words like ka, or ka is a person or a man. But say that's my man, you'd say ach ka wu. So it has this unexpected rounded ending. There's a few words that are just like that, right? Okay. The other thing, any combination of any U vowel, u, u, o, and any G, K, or X ending will push it to be rounded. So if you go ug, or uk, or uk, any of those, or oo, it's got to be a rounded ending. Last thing. If the word ends with one of these consonants, ch, k, k, t, k, ts, it must switch to the voiced version of those. So ch to j, because it's got a j, right? K, g, k, k, t, d, k, gl, ts, z. Okay? This one chart shows you all of the kind of rule, but it's also just a bunch of letters, so it gets kind of confusing. So what we do is we look at them in action. Yeah, because there is a hidden rounded ending on ka. Because you would expect it to be ka yi, but it's not. So sa follows, so sa is a name. It's a noun and it's also a verb root. So that's why you'd say ach sa yi. It follows those conventions. It's open and it's low. So ye is what you add to the end to make it mine. Ach sa yi. Good question. Okay. These are relational pronouns. We can also call them possessive pronouns. So we're going to take this little possessed noun, which just means my thing, or the thing or things that belong to someone. So if you want to be like those seagulls in Finding Nemo, and they're saying mine, they would say, go ahead and try this out. So my thing, ach aye, ach aye. So these would work for also kinship. My mother, ach kla. My hand, ach jin. So to say your thing, you, it aye. It aye. And so we found this really useful. So let's say someone walks off and they leave something behind. I might say their name to get their attention and say, "Ai akya? Is this yours? Is this your thing?" To say they're a single they, that person, do ai. Do ai. And then to pluralize these, our, ha ai. Ha ai. And however you want to say this one in English, y'all's, you all's, yours. I don't know how people do that. I guess it depends on where you're from. I like to say y'all's because I don't know what else to say. But in Lingit, it's got its own separate pronouns taken care of. Ye are ye. Ye are ye. Ye are ye. And then it belongs to a plural, them. It's theirs. Hastu are ye. Hastu are ye. Hastu aye.
Hast du Ei?
So you could say something like Hatachankiyan hastu aye sati awe hayukatangi. Kel asaka kwahin. Kel just tayna kha aye. Shtakat kha. Haji yisawe wududli hayukatangi. If someone wanted to argue about it, say our language it's our little grandchildren, our future generations. It belongs to them. It's their thing, our language. It doesn't belong to one person. Nobody can claim it. It was made for the people. Okay, so these are the ones as you kind of learn these lists of pronouns. My, ach, your, their, a single they, de. Our, ha, y'all's, ye, their, plural, hastu. Yeah, good question. So I go back and forth between saying possessive and relational because you don't own your mother, or you don't own, maybe you own your kids. I don't know, it's up to you how you think about that. But also this relational pronoun, sometimes it just shows a relationship between two things, like in place names, when you say like Chakhini, Chakhini is a Eagle River as a place name, as opposed to Chakhini, which would be the Eagle's water. But I go back and forth like on what to call them. But I think they show a relationship, because you could also say Suhakakewa'a. Su, again, ha, our, ka, on, kewa'a. The day broke, it dawned. So the day broke upon us again. It's a Lingit greeting. Yeah, good question. Okay.
Kunay,
Ah,
I don't know if Robbie is still on. She has a really simple gestures that show ach, du.
yep, hey.
Yeah, so Robbie, are you there? Maybe Kashka will show you.
Ah,
Okay. Where are we here? Okay. Oh, I thought I turned on your
Nope.
video.
kuksayu.
There we are. Okay. Kuslek? No? Like, okay. So this is Robbie's way of teaching, and these are just the possessive pronouns that you've been talking about. She taught me this years ago. I've been using it forever teaching kids. So we all learned this set of pronouns, not all of them, but this one. Okay, so everyone has to do what I'm doing, okay? Ready? One hand. Ach,
Ach,
eh, do.
du,
Ha,
ha,
yi,
ye,
hastu.
hastu.
Nee, oh, klik zoek. Ach,
Ach,
eh, do.
du,
Ha,
ha,
yi,
ye,
hastu.
hastu.
Ye, oh, yak, eh.
Hey.
Gonna cease. Gonna cease, kuslek.
Ukecha. Yes, absolutely. So learning these, and so it's like, who does it belong to? What's the relationship, right? Ha sometimes puts things into capital letters too. Ha ani, ha kusti, ha kohas. Sometimes they become these big concepts like our land and our culture and our ancestors. So going through these rules sort of one set at a time. So what we'll do is we'll review these and we'll wrap up for tonight. And then maybe tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll see if folks will conjure up a topic. We'll talk for a little bit. We'll try to keep it maybe a little bit shorter, but we'll see. It's always good to talk. But then I'm going to show you pictures of some nouns. And your job is to tell me what the noun is, what its name is. So I'll show you a picture and there's no name on it. You gotta tell me the Tlingit name for it. They're all from the first 2 chapters or 3, or maybe from the beginning Tlingit workbook. And then you're gonna pick a well, you're gonna say mine. We're just gonna claim everything. That's my lake, my rock. And then you're gonna take a prediction of the possessed version of that noun. Okay, open. So if it's open, pay attention to the end. Is there a consonant on it? No. Then it gets an open ending. So we should expect ye. So if the noun is sa, then the possessed version would be ach sa ye. It's my sa. If it's closed, so it has a consonant but no W, we should expect that to be a regular closed ending. It should be just the letter I. You add to it. So if you have keys, you should predict ach kisi, my keys. If it ends with a W, that's a rounded ending, right? So rounded means your lips are kind of curled up like you're blowing out a little candle or something, or getting ready to whistle or do whatever. So gao, ach, gao, okay? So same thing, we're following that pattern, low to high, high to low. That's my gao. If there's a W on the end with the consonant, well, maybe I'm missing a vowel there, then we should expect the same thing. We add a U. But basically this one, the W converts to a U. So we have gahu, ach, gahu. So that now becomes hu. Any U vowel plus any G, K, or X will mean it has to have a rounded ending. Tanuch, ach, tanuchu. All of these will switch over to the voiced version. Cheech becomes ach, cheej. CH to the J. Same sound, you just turn your vocal cords on. Kook, ach, kooku. K to the G. Yuk, ach, yuku. Right, so this also follows that rounded ending rule. That's a U vowel, that's a K, you end up with a rounded ending. Keet, ach, kidi, T to a D. Cake, ach, kegle, TL to the DL. And hoots, ach, hoodzi, TS to the DZ. All following though these same rules about high to low, low to high. So there's a couple of things that just sort of, these are the standards. And then there's a few other rules to sort of throw in there. Once we start looking at them, it does make a lot of sense. You're able to predict them pretty fast. And then you could sort of revert back to something like this if you wanted to, right? The last thing is there are some exceptions. If it has a short high vowel, it should get pushed long and low. Te, ach, te, ye. And there's a whole bunch of words that end with ah. Tiya or tiya, chasha, hita, shita. And they're usually the one that does this verb. There's some verb root right there. Those ones just have this special exception. Everything is always short and low. Shita becomes shitayi. Chasha becomes chashayi. Okay. But we will see these in action tomorrow, as well as showing you, well, There, well, that's enough for now. Hucha. Kunchi, show Johan, yak echa. Sekanen. Yewushkach tustin, yak echa.
Gunastis.
Nastis.
I'm not.
Segana nachu.
Tiakan.
No, it's cheese.
Cheese.
Okay. Kunchi.
Cheese. Siaken.
Yeah, well.
Gunashkish.
Cheese. Yeah.